They remind me of cockroaches.
There's really nothing you can do to help someone change
if they don't want to change. Covert really means hidden.
And if you've known
A covert narcissist,
you probably have noticed that a lot of these
negative characteristics are often very hidden
until you really get to know them. If you're in a relationship with someone who is a
covert narcissist,
that person cannot easily change. And it is impossible for us to change them. So you might end up in a situation where you
feel like you're beating your head up against a wall
to make this relationship work. And you keep spending all of your effort, all of your time and effort trying to make this work.
And it's just not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's just not going anywhere.
They are almost always passive-aggressive. And that's because they have a lot of pent-up aggression. They have a lot of pent-up anger. And it's got to come out somewhere. But they don't feel confident enough to actually be aggressive. So it comes out in a passive-aggressive way. A passive-aggressive way. So it comes out in a passive-aggressive way. This person absolutely loves to tell you what you did wrong after you did it. Now they may or may not tell you what to do first, but they just love being in that position where they can sit on the sidelines and tell somebody else that they've done something wrong. Whereas they're not likely to actually do the things themselves. They don't usually have that kind of drive, but they'll tell you all about how they would have done it if they did. With a covert narcissist, it's a devaluation tool, and it's used very, very often, especially if you're close to this person. So you know that if you do something, you're going to be criticized afterwards. But it's that kind of superior attitude where they have to make sure you know when you're wrong, and they have to make sure that you admit when you're wrong. But they will not do the same. They will not do the same. They feel threatened by confidence. If you're feeling especially good, that's when they're going to devalue you. If you accomplish something big, they might either devalue you for it and kind of downplay it like it's not such a big deal, like, oh, who cares? Or they might change the subject and bring it back around to them, or start an argument. Arguments are a great way for covert narcissists to turn conversations back to them. This person is really never happy. Even when you think they should be happy, even when you think they've gotten everything they've wanted, they're just not happy. And it kind of leaves you thinking that something's missing. It leaves you feeling like something's missing. And if you're in a relationship with this person, you feel like maybe you've done something to make them feel unhappy. This is something that you'll often just see in their eyes or in their facial expression. Even when things are going their way, they're just not happy. These are the people who are going to find fault in everything, and they're going to find a reason not to be happy about something. They can pick things apart, and they're just never truly happy. This person is hypersensitive. And you may not see this early on. If you do, it will usually be towards other people. But once you get into a relationship, once that person starts devaluing you, you'll realize that they are hypersensitive to things that you may not even realize. And you may find that this person just blows up over something that you didn't even expect was going to trigger them in any way. Or you may say something in an argument that you think might trigger them a little bit, that might make them a little bit angry, but their reaction goes way beyond anything you could have expected. So with this person, you end up walking on eggshells. You end up walking on eggshells.
With this person, you end up walking on eggshells.
They're very dismissive people. And you'll see this especially in a romantic partnership with a covert narcissist. You don't get the feeling like they ever really want you around. And even sometimes if you do get the feeling like they want you there, you always know they don't need you there. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. They strongly believe that they don't need you because everyone is replaceable to a narcissist. It creates this feeling kind of like they've always got one foot out the door, like they could leave at any moment. And that is the sad truth. They can leave at any moment, and they may. This person will be extremely judgmental. Now, depending on how covert they are, how insecure they are, they may not be super outwardly judgmental. But even an insecure narcissist, you will see it in their face. You will hear it in their tone. There's always going to be that contempt. And it really just all comes down to how they're accepted. So if they're around people who will enjoy them tearing somebody down, they'll do it. But if they're around somebody who's going to maybe try to shame them for doing that, they're going to keep quiet about it. But that judgment is always there.
Always there. That judgment is always there. Always there. Judgment is always there.
They're overly entitled. And we've talked about housework somewhat and how narcissists almost never do their fair share. Now that could sometimes be a little bit of a laziness, but with a covert narcissist, it's more often because they feel like you should be doing it. They'll decide for some reason that it is solely your responsibility to do all the housework, and it's not a discussion. It's just their expectation. Because they overvalue their contribution to everything. They overvalue their contribution to everything. This person is going to be introverted. And unlike the overt narcissist, the covert narcissist is more of an introvert. And this can be very isolating because it can get in the way of you having a good time and you having your own social life. Because in these situations, a covert narcissist will also guilt or shame you for doing things that they don't want you to do.
Guilt or shame you for doing things that they don't want you to do.
They are so often condescending and superior. Whenever the narcissist feels that he or she has the upper hand, that he or she knows more than you, or if you happen to be wrong in front of a narcissist, that's when you're going to see this condescending, superior attitude come through. Let's say the narcissist is a very religious person, or they seem to have this very strong faith, and you don't. And they may put you down because of it. They will very likely act superior to you because they have this faith, and so they are good and you are bad. 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 They have this faith, and so they are good and you are bad. They are good and you are bad. They are good and you are bad. They are good. They will idealize and devalue on repeat. It's a cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again. And after the devaluation often comes the discard. And it may or may not be something that is completely obvious and in your face, like a clean break. They act like they're done with you. Maybe if you're in a romantic relationship, they cheat on you and they just don't care how you handle it. So the idealization phase, we often talk about love bombing. That is when they go hard and fast, when they really build you up. And the devaluation phase is when they tear you down. So they build you up only to tear you down, and it happens again and again and again.
They cheat on you, and they just don't care.
This idealization and devaluation, these are things that you're not going to see in any healthy relationship. What we're talking about here really is emotional abuse. What we're talking about here really is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse. Really is emotional abuse. What we're talking about here really is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse. This person may have a different public image. And this is something that if you've been with this person for a while, it's probably obvious to you. You know that they're a different person behind closed doors than they are in public. But one way to tell if you're on the fence is think about how this person has treated you and some of the things that they've said to you. If people in their lives, if people close to them, who seem to be close to them in their lives, would be appalled and would almost not believe, or maybe even not believe at all, that this person would say that, then that person has a different public persona than private persona. Because you know full well and you expect them to say these things because you've been there so many times before. And they just don't care. They just don't care. They cheat on them and they just don't care. They just don't care. They just don't care. This person gaslights constantly. So the gaslighting is often around some sort of lie, cover up. And it may even come out in something that they said that they deny saying, or something that they did that they deny doing. Even if you saw it with your own two eyes, they'll deny it and question your own sanity, making you question your own sanity if they're successful.
And question your own sanity.
They're also very cynical. So they don't have a rosy view of the world around them or of the people in their lives. They're distrusting because they know their intentions. They know that even if they're not out to actually hurt other people, they know that they're willing to hurt other people to get their own way. And that they don't care if they do. If you can imagine that's where you're coming from, then it's hard to think that other people aren't thinking the same things, that other people aren't living in the same way, and that they don't care if they do. They don't care, they don't care, they don't care, they don't care. I often talk about empathy because a narcissist will always be lacking in empathy. And that's something that's so difficult for us to understand because it's one of those things that helps us identify as humans. We care about each other, and that drives our actions. So it's really difficult to understand someone not having empathy if you do have empathy. But the reverse must also be true. It must be difficult to understand what it's like to have empathy if you don't. And so a narcissist might assume the worst of you, and they almost always will. They might assume the worst of you and other people just because they know what they're capable of. And they just assume that everyone else is capable of the same thing. That helps us identify as humans. They may identify as a victim. And depending on who you're dealing with, you may see varying levels of this, but in so many situations, there is some sort of a victim story. And it could be a story from childhood, or it could be a story about past relationships, people who have wronged this narcissist. And they will gladly tell you this early on. If it's a narcissist that you meet in your adult life, if it's a romantic relationship, they will tell you this very early. And unfortunately for people with compassion and with empathy, this could prevent you from actually leaving. It could help you explain some of the things, some of the behaviors that are unacceptable. And especially for highly sensitive people, it could leave you wanting to help, wanting to fix this person who is clearly broken. But really, in general, you're going to find a victimized story. This is the type of person who just can't catch a break. They have all the skills, they are entitled to all the things, but they're not getting it for whatever reason. We know the reason. The reason is usually because they don't actually deserve it, or because they didn't actually try for it. But it'll still come out as this victim story because they don't believe the truth of the matter. This person is clearly broken.
They don't believe the truth of the matter.
This person is clearly broken. This person is very likely to downplay or deny their anger. A covert narcissist is likely to have angry outbursts. You can very, very easily trigger a covert narcissist. There's a lot of anger bubbling up behind the surface, and they keep it down, they push it down often. If you say something that triggers them, they could completely explode. But here's the thing, the anger that they exhibit can also be a trigger when you bring it up later. They don't want to admit that they were that angry. They don't want to admit that they lost their cool. So they'll completely deny it. And this is another form of gaslighting. You know what happened. They might even deny yelling at you while they're yelling at you. Will twist any of your problems to be about them. And this will come out in all sorts of ways, but it is extremely obvious when you're dealing with some sort of grief or loss. Again, it's so difficult for us to understand someone who doesn't have empathy when you have empathy. So we tend to think that certain things are universal. You will lose somebody who's important to you, and you expect that somebody else who's important to you is going to care. It's just a given until you encounter a narcissist. Because during these times with a narcissist, things are very different from what you would expect. In these times, they are very likely to start an argument with you, because shifting the conversation isn't really going to be very effective. When you're feeling grief and you need to talk to somebody, you need the emotional support from your partner or your family member, somebody who you care about and you think cares about you, you're not just going to sweep it under the rug or let them sweep it under the rug. You need to get this stuff out. So they're not going to be able to just change the subject. So what they will often do is start an argument, and then they'll twist and turn that argument until it's about something usually that you've argued about 1,000,000 times before. So they know exactly what they can say to inflame the situation and to infuriate you. And you're likely to get even more furious because why are you doing this now? Why now? Why? I'm dealing with all this stuff. Why are we talking about this? It makes no sense. Honestly, you end up feeling like you're in a parallel universe. This can't be happening. This person can't think that this is an appropriate response to what's happening here. And if they don't start an argument about something that's going on in the moment and twist it back to something bigger, what they're likely to do is to expect something of you. So often with a narcissist, it's sex. The worst of time possible. They expect something like sex from you, or it could be something else. And they will throw an all-out tantrum if you don't give them their way. And again, you're sitting there like, how is this appropriate? How is any of this appropriate at this time? Don't you care about my feelings? And unfortunately, the answer is no. They lack that empathy component, and they just can't care. They really only care about themselves. And again, this happens in so many different ways throughout the relationship, but you may not notice it. When you notice it is when you need their emotional support.
Only care about themselves. Only care about themselves.
It's a time when you really just need them, and they are not there. Not only are they not there, they're just not there in such an unbelievable way. A covert narcissist will exploit your vulnerabilities. Now, this is something that any covert narcissist will do. So if you tell them something that you're insecure about, they will use that to devalue you because they know it's going to work. If you tell them something that you're afraid of, they might use it to hurt you. Now, they're not going to do it right away necessarily, so it's not always obvious. And unfortunately, it's a side effect of having a covert narcissist close to you. Because if you don't know this person is a narcissist, you're going to share things about yourself. It's natural to be vulnerable with the people that you care about. Do not share anything that they could use against you because they will. They will. They will. They will. They will. They will. Use against you because they will. Because they will. They will. They will. They will use against you because they will. Because they will. They will. You are often going to see that this person will engage in smear campaigns. They are all about the takedown. So these will be people who will talk trash about you. They're not saying anything to your face, but they're talking behind your back. They're saying awful things about you. They may be sharing private things that you shared with them and didn't want anyone else to know. And you may or may not know that they're doing this until it progresses much further. So until somebody else tells you, or you start noticing that people are treating you differently, and you start to connect the dots. This person is very clearly vengeful. You know not to cross this person, and if you do, you know that they're going to get revenge. They're not going to let it lie. This is why the smear campaigns are often so successful, because there are groups of people who know that it's not so fun to be on this person's bad side. So for the moment, they will participate in taking someone else down because it's not them. For the moment, they can breathe easy that they aren't the ones in the narcissist's spotlight. This person is very clearly vengeful. 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 Vengeful.
They're going to get revenge.
This person relies heavily on triangulation. And triangulation is a manipulation tactic that narcissists so often use. It could be a romantic partner who triangulates exes against each other, or an ex against a current partner. Essentially, they're putting one on a pedestal to devalue the other. And they can also use triangulation to make you feel guilty. They might bring other people into it. Well, this person believes that you're this and this. This person believes that you did this wrong. Instead of saying the thing themselves, they might use another person to kind of pin down against you. So this comes up again in the smear campaign. Essentially, they're putting one on a pedestal to devalue the other. They're putting one on a pedestal to devalue the other. To devalue the other. The covert narcissist is very likely to avoid direct responsibility. So they aren't likely to take on a lot of responsibility for themselves, but they will be there to tell you that you did wrong if you do take on that responsibility. The covert narcissist especially is more insecure, and they are less likely to take those kinds of risks. Now, if it's something that they're completely comfortable with, they might do that. They might try to push for a position of power. But a covert narcissist is much more likely to sit on the sidelines. Narcissism is the last thing you'd expect. You know something is wrong, you know something's off. You may have discovered that this person really struggles with empathy, and they are awful to you at times, and sometimes they're great. So they go through that idealization, evaluation. If you are in a relationship with a covert narcissist and don't really know a lot about covert narcissism, the last thing you're going to expect is that the person you're with is a narcissist, because they don't fit that stereotypical, overt, grandiose narcissist image. And there's a good chance that you're experiencing emotional abuse. And there's a good chance that you're experiencing emotional abuse.